Clubhouse.
Welcome back to another edition of Pod Clubhouse's Press Pass. This is Paul, fresh back from the Houston Horror Film Festival 2023 edition, where I had the pleasure of meeting filmmaker Victoria Wallace Kinkead outside the film screening room at the hotel. I did not get to catch her film, but I saw the filmmaker attachment on her badge, and I was like, I need to talk to you. So I introduced myself, and she gave me a link to her movie, and I wanted to know more. So thanks for joining me today, Victoria, and Jason, the producer of the movie.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
All right, so let's first talk about the movie, In the Dark. 1-minute shorts, I'm sure, are a gigantic challenge to try to get everything that you want to do, or at least most of what you want to do, contained within that 1 minute. So where did we start? How did this project come to be?
So Jason and I were discussing other projects, actually, and this probably would have been in January, I believe, of this year. And we had been talking about it, and he mentioned that Lazy Park Productions was putting on a film festival called Zeal Reel. And all of the shorts that go into Zeal Reel have to be 60 seconds or less. And we thought that would be a great thing to participate in. It would be a good challenge, something very short we could do in a day. So we got together and pitched some ideas, got a script down, shot it in one evening, and it's been a lot of fun since.
So this was for a competition for something called Zeal Reel. For people that aren't familiar with that, what is that?
It's a 1 minute or less film competition. So all films have to be under 60 seconds. And they do the screenings at the Houston Arboretum. It's through Lazy Park Productions.
So this is a local effort?
Yes, it is a local thing. And they take films locally, internationally. But it was a great opportunity to meet a lot of local and international filmmakers, and just a great opportunity to have a challenge that wasn't so restrictive for a filmmaking competition.
Were they genre films, or were they just anything?
Any film. The only real restriction was under 60 seconds.
Okay, I have not heard of this, but I will look into this, because Houston is I don't know. I think it's a as far as a film community, I don't think of it as like bustling, and I'd like to think of it that way. Maybe you could tell me more about the Houston film community, because when I look at Texas, I think Austin, not Houston so much.
Yeah, I think with Houston, we do get overlooked, not just in film, but in a lot of things. We're the fourth largest city in the United States, and yet we're still overlooked constantly for pretty much everything. But the community here is so great and so special, and there's just this culture of collaboration and helping each other and really supporting each other. And we have, ironically, some of the best resources for independent filmmakers, I think, compared to, pretty much any other city. We have free networking events constantly going on. We have, different organizations like HCAS, SWAMP, I'm blanking out, Houston Film Commission. We have a lot of great local film screenings and festivals. Houston horror community is very unique in how wonderful and embracing they are.
Very active.
So yes, it's really a great community, and I wish that people appreciated it more.
Let's get back to your film, In the Dark. Okay, so you scripted it. You're the director.
Yes.
All right, let's just cover like some basics then. Where did your idea come from? Was it like anything related to a personal event? Was it just interest in nightmares, sleep paralysis, or just unseen things in the night that make people stay awake.
I did have sort of a thought of something that would happen in my childhood. Not a traumatic incident, but I remember as a kid, if I didn't want to go to sleep, my dad wanted me to go to sleep. He'd say it's bedtime, and I'd say I'm not tired, and he'd be like, "Well, just close your eyes and you'll go to sleep." And
That
it
tried and
wasn't,
true
yes,
dadism.
it wasn't related to any sort of nightmare or trauma with sleep paralysis or anything like that. But I really enjoy the horror genre. And I wanted something that I could write for one scene, one location, super easy, something that could really be condensed down, something that we could do with no real money attached to it. And it fit everything.
What I liked about your piece, as opposed to I mentioned to you that I was one of the volunteer judges that kind of was the gatekeeper for helping assess incoming film.
Okay.
So one thing that I noticed, and it wasn't unique to this event, but just in independent film is the photography. Typically real eyes on a camera, pretty much sitting still and capturing a scene from start to finish. Your film, though, the camera, it didn't exactly move, but it did have a lot of different shots, all crammed into 1 minute. And that was an aspect of it that I thought was great. What led you to that choice, or is that just something you've always admired in films that you like?
Well, I look at the films that I watch and that I've listened to people critique, and I really think it's important to have that variety of shots in any film, because if it's too stagnant, you can lose interest very easily. The audience has difficulty really connecting to it, I find, but you also don't want to have too many shots because then it has the opposite effect. So it was really about creating interesting and dynamic shots, especially because we weren't showing a lot of effects or anything like that. There really aren't any effects in the film. And it's one character in one space. So we had to make it dynamic in other ways.
I guess maybe what people are trying to get away with is low production values, because they don't have everything they need to dress the entire set, light the entire set. So if they just shoot one direction, then that'll do it. But you probably had to attend to this entire room, up, down, left, right, light it all, make it consistent from shot to shot, and you did that pretty successfully, I thought.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely, we dressed the space, and we did our best to make it as close as possible. And we didn't have a storyboard in the traditional sense. We had a shot list.
Okay.
And it would just say shot of fan, shot of dresser or nightstand or items in bedroom, to sort of paint a picture of who this person is. To really get as much information, be that verbally or non-verbally, into the film as possible.
We come from narrative, or at least I, filmmaking, and it's, we're, it's a storyboard, it's a shot list. We're really blocking shots, getting characters, actors to move in and out of the spaces, getting a cool shot. And this was a much smaller space to work in, so it was kind of liberating, and not so many variables as I'm normally used to. It just goes to show you don't need a lot of thing to communicate an effective emotion.
Was the actress an actress, or was she a friend, or?
The actress Gabby, I have worked with her on a few different productions, and throughout Houston. She is local, and she's typically done crew, but she also models. And I told her, I've got this project, I think you would fit the role really well for it. And she did an amazing job on it. And Gabby did actually get the Best Actress award for Zeal Reel, which was very exciting. She really pulled it off, I think.
What did you end up shooting with?
Well, I brought an Osmo Pocket. So we shot with that. And then, Jason, which camera did you have?
It's a Sony. It was one of the older ones, but it's a 4K mirrorless camera. It's pretty compact.
Like a
I take it on my
DSLR
vacations with
mirrorless?
me.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. And what did you assemble it all in?
Yeah, Final Cut Pro X. So.
And was the crew just you two, or was there others from the Houston film community helping you out?
It was myself, Jason, Gabby, Nelson, and then Anya Rodionova is another friend of mine who also works with Gabby and I. And she was there as well, helping with the filming and photography.
All right. So this is your first video movie project in a while, Victoria. You were explaining to me that you have some background in this. It's been a little time since then, and now you're back at it. What drew you back in? What was like, you know what? I need to do this again.
I had gone to university in Tokyo, actually, Temple University has a campus there. And I did a bachelor's in communications and video production. I had gotten to a point there where I started doing some documentary work for a course that I was doing at the time. And I really enjoyed it. I finally got to a place where I was excited to have connections and be trusted in that community. And then COVID hit. And in that process of lockdown and graduation and some of the stuff going on in Japan at the time, my visa ran out and I could not get it renewed, and ended up coming back to Houston, where I grew up, and ended up here with no connections. I think, like most people, I sort of hid out for about a year, and then started, once it things felt a little safer, started getting in on some local productions I found through Facebook groups. I would PA, do whatever I really could, wherever I could on what was available. And I got into first ADing and producing, especially with sort of my business background as well. Was fairly confident in that, but didn't really feel like I could write until I started speaking with Jason and we got into this film. Then I realized, I really enjoy this. I don't need someone else to help me write. I can write on my own. And so that's sort of how this happened.
What about you, Jason? What about your history with filmmaking? Have you been making films for a while, or always in a producer role, or here, there, and everywhere?
Making films for it's been 10 years, so it's been a while. I just wanted to be a director, directing my movies and stuff. But I started getting into it, and found out that there's a multitude of positions that you need to do and things that need to happen. So I kind of started producing and then got into writing. So I've done short films probably since 2014, around there was when I started my first short film. And then produced them, directed them, edited most of them, wrote most of them. But yeah, that's what I've been. That's kind of, and it's only been just about one short film project a year. So I, raise the money, hire the crew and everything, and find the locations and make the movie. So that's pretty much what I've been doing.
Any specific genre or I don't know, interest?
I started out doing horror, and that it's just so much fun. Horror is it's just such a fun genre to work in. You get to play with blood. You're forgiven if it doesn't turn out all that great. It's easy to elicit the emotion. And then I kind of went into more drama. I did a period piece.
That's expensive.
It really was. It really was. But I like to think that I produced it well enough that it looked good. I think we probably $20,000 or $30,000 that we spent on that on that short film, which is really tough. It's really tough to get any traction with those things. But now I'm coming back to a horror and feature horror script and getting back into the horror scene. And going to the horror film festival this past weekend was just so inspirational, and it made me just think that there's a lot of support out there, particularly in this city, for this genre.
Yeah, I mean, Victoria and I were talking about it offline that we had attended, without knowing each other prior to this fest, we had both attended the 2021 edition, and I don't know, it seemed like maybe 4 times as many people attended this one as that one,
for sure.
just in my rough estimation.
Yep, absolutely. I believe it.
All right, let's get to know you guys a little bit more. What is your favorite movie all time, Victoria?
Oh, that's a very difficult
Isn't it?
question. Yeah, it is. I've got to say one of the films that I like to come back to because I always find something different in it is Alejandro Jodorowsky's Santa Sangre. That's, I think, a really interesting story. It's unique. It has there's something, I see a detail here or there that just, I never notice. And I've seen that film probably about 10 times. And I keep coming back to it.
What about in the horror genre?
I mean, there's a lot of great films. I really love, I guess this is more thriller, but Satoshi Kon films, Perfect Blue is, I think a really great film, very terrifying. I think Lake Mungo is a great horror film that also does a lot with none of the special effects that you see today. In a lot of films, the story speaks for itself.
What about you, Jason? Favorite movie and favorite horror movie?
Well, favorite movie for me, I got to go with something that just caught me whenever I was a child and I watched it. That was Empire of the Sun. Steven Spielberg film. I think it was
Little Christian Bale.
Mid-'80s. Mid-age John Malkovich, and even Ben Stiller's in that movie.
Oh, wow. Now that one I didn't know. Yeah.
It's like a journey for the kid, just a long... you see him change over the long period of the war. And it was just so inspiring for me just to watch the transformation where he goes from the beginning to the end. But I love all of Spielberg's early films. The Color Purple, really, oh my God, that one too. I think those two, Color Purple and Empire of the Sun, for me was like, oh my God, this is something that I just want to take that emotion watching those films and just keep it. I will always keep it with me. Just love the way that the films make you feel, the emotion that it elicits. So horror films, I go to the Houston Horror Film Convention, and there was, I see a lot of alien stuff. So I guess I could go with either Alien or Aliens. Like, I would say both of them. Alien because it's simple but very story. It's a horror. It's the Indians get killed one by one. Everybody dies except the last person standing. But it was just so elevated in the set design, in the world that it sets everybody's imagination off. So you show a lot, but there's so much more that everybody wanted out of that film. And true to form, James Cameron just took it to the next level.
I see, Victoria, your tastes are a little film schooly for me.
Really?
I cannot speak intelligently very long about your choices. I respect them, but I cannot go on and on about them. Popcorn movies, on the other hand, like I'm very adjacent to Jason's choices.
Yeah. I mean, Jason has great choices too. I mean, honestly, I love so many films, and I've seen so many films, and it's really hard,
Sure.
I'd say really I don't have a favorite. It's just things I've seen that stick to me for one reason or another. But Aliens and Alien, great films, and especially the editing, I think, on those films truly made it, what it is in a way.
Definitely high water marks for those genres.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it, like Alien in particular, to me is like right saddling a time where, 70s sci-fi, with the exception of Star Wars, was very slow, plodding, dour, things were not going to turn out great for the people in there. But Ridley Scott managed to take that kind of aesthetic and fuse it with the more modern tastes for something happening, some adventure, some journey there, that there's something to look forward to. There's some hope there. So not quite Soylent Green, but still some of that really rough, lived-in aesthetic, which makes the film really look great.
And the suspense they build.
Yes.
And you really have to give it to H.R. Geiger.
Yeah.
With the creature design and the alien ship, just the vibe that it elicits is just amazing. Terrifying, but it's just something beautiful about it too.
Yeah.
So the choice for H.R. Geiger, just to the next level.
So let's talk about maybe working in Texas on films. Another person that I got to meet at the film festival, I asked about whether or not the current strikes were any kind of big deal, and she indicated no, that actually Texas is it's anti-union for just about anything, but I didn't realize that extended to film. So what has been your experience, or your, I don't know, finger in the air for how that's impacting us here and production, etc.?
Well, from my understanding, the way that SAG works is not the way that a traditional trade union or something like that would work. So with SAG, the only way as an actor to get into SAG is for you to work on a SAG project and be brought in because you have to be. And then once you're in, you cannot work on non-SAG projects. So especially at the very independent level, where there aren't a lot of SAG projects going on, you're not going to have SAG actors here because they can't work on the projects. When it comes to these local events and things like that, for the most part, on the independent filmmaking level, the very independent filmmaking level, fairly unaffected because we're not SAG affiliated, and that really cancels it out.
So production moves forward. Are the people that appear in those films or write for those films, are they at risk for future membership?
If I'm working on my small project and that is not a SAG project, and I'm not really working for a company that would, constitute a scabbing, then no, I'm not at risk. If I were to go and possibly try to sell something to Netflix or one of these other companies that they're striking against, that might create problems. If I were to try to work on a production, that might create problems. But the tiny independent films, really, especially locally here, I don't think that would affect anybody. There are independent films that SAG is approving. Once again, that's a level beyond,
right?
I think what we're currently working on. But there are still films being made. It's just, very small amount of SAG films that have to be approved.
Yeah, they basically fully agree to SAG's current demands on the other AMTP companies. Like A24, I guess, is one of those companies that has agreed, and they can produce things.
And that's wonderful. It shows that there is a possibility to still make films and still make good films with the current terms, because it is a very important fight, especially with the AI stuff going on. It really is a very pivotal moment in filmmaking.
It is. I've been to a couple of things this summer. One was a television festival in Austin called ATX, and there were several writers there, even though the writing strike had just begun, but they were there to basically talk about why there needed to be a writer's strike. And there was a discussion on AI, and these were not no-name writers. This was writers from Lost, shows like that. or even more recent shows. And they had a lot to say. And like I mentioned, Comic-Con had, before we started online, I mentioned I was at Comic-Con, and there was a discussion there featuring voice artists. I guess they probably are the most vulnerable right now with AI,
Absolutely.
because writers are nervous about AI, but AI is not quite going to replace them tomorrow, but maybe next year. Whereas AI can probably replace a lot of voiceover like right now today, and even do it in a notable person's voice. And
Yes.
yeah, so that was a pretty wild discussion. 2 hours of listening to what they had to say, and I'm convinced. Yeah, they when they say existential crisis, they are not kidding.
You know, there's phone scams that are very sophisticated now that work in AI. So it
Hmm.
is something that already exists. I mean, artists were the first, 2D artists, illustrators were really the first to be impacted because all of a sudden you can pay, the computer $10 to whip out, all this stuff instantly. In whereas before people were relying on commissions, especially during the pandemic, and that just the rug was completely pulled out from under them. When it's something like, oh, the illustrators, people say, well, I'm not an illustrator, so it doesn't really affect me. And then they'll say, well, I'm not a voiceover artist, I'm an actor, so it doesn't really affect me. Or I direct and write, but I don't act. But really, these things never stop. And so it's important to really set those boundaries and set them well. Because, I mean, one day it'll turn back to you.
Well, the trick is that the horse is probably out of the barn, and
Yes.
they're trying to call it back, and,
Yes.
they're just too late. So now they're trying to figure out what to do now. Like there was a discussion about putting like maybe a 6-month moratorium on further AI development for things like OpenAI and companies like that. And I just don't think that's going to work. That's
No.
whoever's control of that, they're not going to do that. So somehow they've got to leapfrog ahead and figure out not only today's dangers, but tomorrow and the day after that, and try to build in the guidelines that'll protect them then, not only here,
Yes.
but internationally, which is even harder.
Well, I think also AI is currently unregulated, which, they can just do whatever they want. And I think first there need to be very clear regulations. I think there needs to be a stop until those regulations are in place, because otherwise it's just going to snowball out of control. I mean, that's what we're seeing currently. And the quality of the works produced by AI, they may not be better. They may not even be very good, but they're, mediocre enough for general advertising. They just have to stick an IP on it. And that's very scary. Is that sort of the trend we've been going to for many years now, even before AI?
You're echoing a lot of the sentiment that I've heard from other people in the creative
Yep.
field, and it's a legitimate concern. But that's not exactly what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about you guys, your film, and your future plans. Are there other productions from Victoria and Jason that we have to look forward to?
Well, I've got my short and my feature.
Oh, just those. Okay.
Just those. And we did. Yeah, Victoria can talk about the Metropolis.
We did do a second film after this past one, which is for another local film competition, which is through the River Oaks Theater.
Oh,
And they have Metropolis has entered the public domain here. And so the prompt was to create something inspired by the film, 3 minutes or less, and then to use footage from the film in your piece. And so we created a Metropolis inspired film, which is less based on the film itself and more about the history of the film and what Metropolis means and how you can apply it to your Metropolis. And so that we hopefully will get in. We're still waiting for the notification. And so that will show at the River Oaks Theater on September 1st.
well, they're getting down
And
to it.
yes. And so hopefully we get to show it and talk about it live. Yeah. And after that, hopefully it'll be releasable to the public. Personally, I just shot another film titled Pizza Party, which is a comedic horror short full use of practical effects. I've got an illustrator who's also working on the project as well for a bit of multimedia sort of look. That's been a lot of fun to do. Hopefully that'll show in the festivals next year. I am looking to get a crowdfunding campaign for that to recoup some of the costs. So stay tuned for that. I also, I grew up Jewish, and I'm really excited to start writing some more personal stories about my heritage and how I grew up and sort of the superstitions from my side of the family. So I'm very excited for that as well.
Wow, that is a very active slate. I mean,
Thank you.
it sounds like you're a person that perhaps was frustrated from a period of inactivity and were like, you know what, screw that, I am producing now.
Well, I think it's important as an independent filmmaker. I really want this to eventually be a full-time career for me. In order to do that, I have to show that I can not just create one thing, which is a hurdle in among itself, but that I can consistently deliver, consistently tell different stories. So that's really my focus right now, is coming up with different stories and doing different things.
I have a lot of respect for that outlook and that ambition, Victoria.
Thank you.
What about you, Jason? Are you collaborating, or do you have your own? You mentioned a short and a feature. Are these written down anywhere?
They are.
Good. That's a good start.
But both of them are. You can't just wait around and, just say, hey, you could put it out there and just say, hey, I'm a director. It's a director, really. But yeah, if you want to make films, the best way to start is to write. So you got to write, send it out to some people, get the feedback. And then if you want to do it, you put the money down and raise the money, find the money, and you just make the film. I have a short. The title is called Smear the Queer. Provocative title, but growing up in Texas, we used in a rural community, we used to play football all the time, and it was
Smear the Queer, sort of a relative of football.
Tackle football game.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So every single project that you do, short film, feature film, it's an exercise in problem solving, and how do you capture this thing that was you have to solve the problem. And the problem could be like casting, could be the set design, the special effects, all of those things. And you just basically solve the problem. How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to cost to do? What are the variables that I need to get it to facilitate this thing going forward? Because you want it to be authentic. You want it to be true. You got to take care of those variables.
Well, and it sounds like you've developed a skill in budgeting, that's a hard thing for anybody to learn. You either kind of can sum up something on the whole and be like, this is going to cost X because I've done this before and stuff like that.
Yes.
Or you can't.
Yes.
Even if you've done it before, you just never grasp.
Sure.
Some people never just gain that skill. I mean, independent film production is going to have a super low budget, so and a lot of what, like you just mentioned, problem solving, that it sounds like you've honed some of that.
I like to think so. Each one of my projects, I've always had money left over, enough money that I wanted for post-production. That's another story, and then even festivals, because production is just like the start of the money spend. And then you got post-production, then you got festivals, you got promotion, all of this stuff that you could spend a lot of money into it.
So, Victoria, if someone wanted to do what you just described, in terms of they're in Houston or close enough, and this is something they're interested in, this is their dream, their calling, whatever, how would they get involved with the scene here?
I think the thing that really helped me is the Houston Film Commission has the first Thursdays every month at Brazil on Westheimer and Dunleavy, and you can go for free, and it's a filmmaker mixer and meetup, and they will always show a couple of short films. Sometimes they have like a guest director there. Sometimes it's a test screening for a film, which you can submit a film for test screening. It's completely free. Sometimes, there's a festival that has curated, or a special like curator who's curated some short films for us to watch. And we always get to talk to somebody about it, ask questions. We always get to talk after, see what projects are going on. Anyone's allowed to also get up and make announcements, let people know what's going on. And just going every month has been so beneficial for me to know what's going on, not just for what's going on in that circle, but other people from other circles will come and make announcements. So really finding out what's happening. Facebook groups are great. There's, ones for Houston filmmakers, cast and crew, Texas based. Those are really good. I think, also if you want to get into film, try a film, write it yourself, but you don't know where to start, maybe a competition that's themed would be a good place. Film Freeway, you can look up by location, you can type things in to sort of get the search results you want, and that will give you a bit of a prompt to start writing, which can always be helpful. I would just say for those competitions, it's not always the most reusable film if you want to submit it to other competitions later. They tend to be very specific to that competition. But still, you have something you've made, which is great, and that's the biggest hurdle, is completing the film and showing it.
Speaking of showing it, if someone wanted to see your work or your presence, do you have social media or YouTube channel that people could check out?
I do have social media on Instagram. It's Victoria Wallace Films. The issue with showing the films, I did provide you a secret link
Yes.
To share. But the problem with putting the films publicly on YouTube is some festivals count YouTube as a distribution source. And so if it's public and, a couple thousand people look at it, all of a sudden they don't want to see your film at the festival because everyone's already seen it.
Right.
So we kind of have to keep these things locked down for up to a year sometimes. That's where we are right now. Hopefully this can be released in about January to the full public. And, the ones that working on currently, it'll take probably January of 2025, unfortunately. But that's how filmmaking goes. It's, you build the hype, you tell people where you're at, you show up to these things, you show your films, you talk about them, and you can screen them to people in small batches. And that's really great.
What about you, Jason? Where could people find you, your work, or anything like that?
It's on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, and I put up there little clips that I do, trailers to most of my. So it's Jason Leal. I just search at Jason Leal 77, and it'll pull up my YouTube page. Put up all the trailers on there, and then I think from the trailers you can get a link to the Amazon rental or purchase link. A few of them, particularly the period piece that I did, I spent a lot of money on it, and I'm still trying to recoup a little bit of it. So you can by purchasing it or renting it. It's called Spindletop, so you can search that.
Well, thanks, guys, for talking to me today. It was a pleasure meeting you both and hearing more about your backgrounds, the film In the Dark, and what you have coming out later. I'd be happy to talk to you guys in the future. If you have something you want to share through the podcast, just let me know.
Okay, great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.